Investigators have identified a 25-year-old man as the suspect in the explosion at a fertility clinic in California. He was the only person killed in the blast. Because of the condition of the remains, forensic testing will be conducted to fully identify the body.
Authorities say they believe the suspect wrote what they describe as a manifesto on his anti-pro-life views, and his intention was to live stream his attack. Steve Moore is with us right now. He's a CNN law enforcement contributor, retired supervisory FBI special agent. Steve, thanks very much for joining us. Police are searching for searching the suspect's home, we understand right now. What are authorities looking for at this point in this investigation?
Well, they'll be looking for a combination of things. First of all, you want to get any kind of explosive media or explosive devices out of the home and away from people that it could hurt. You also need to get in there and get all of his social media stuff that he could find out, or that would help them find out what this guy was thinking and who he was talking to. It's very important to understand where he was getting his ideas from and whether they were assisting or they could copycat this crime.
Right, because he left behind this manifesto apparently on his anti-reproductive views. What more can investigators learn from that?
It's going to be hard because, you know, there's really nothing to ever justify something like this, but they're going to be looking for the reason. And every single group like this, I mean, this is a group that most people have never even heard of, they're basically anti-life. And so they're going to need to know a lot more about this organization and whether anybody assisted or provoked or even motivated this person to attack like this.
Steve, how could the suspect in this case obtain the amount of materials needed to set off such a substantial explosion?
Well, there's several ways you can do it. First of all, some explosive materials are easily obtained. You have lawn fertilizer has some explosive components in it. Diesel fuel is used in these things. It is surprisingly easy, unfortunately, to get to legally obtain large amounts of certain explosives or material that can be turned into an explosive. There are some restrictions on how much you can buy, but if you have a lot of time and you're not in a hurry, you can accumulate some in a month, and then next month you can accumulate some, and you can get to the point where you have probably well over 100 pounds or maybe hundreds of pounds of explosives, which is why he needed a vehicle.
Authorities say that the suspect appears to have acted alone here and that there is no further danger to the community. But of course, you know, there's always the concern of copycat attacks. So how do they determine that level of confidence?
You pretty much have to have an absolute certainty before you tell the public that there is no further danger. So by the time the FBI and the police were saying that there was no further danger, they had obtained enough information to convince them that he was a lone actor and that there was nothing out there that would indicate that he had any kind of accomplice. And it may be that he mentioned that he was alone, that he did these things alone, or it could be simply social media and his writings.
Based on what we know now, Steve, were warning signs missed here?
You know, it's really hard to say that warning signs were missed. There were some indicators. I mean, when he was a young kid, he apparently burned the family house down. That's a big deal, but it was expunged from his records. Then he has been involved in building small rockets, smoke bombs, things like that. These are all a disturbing pattern. I think anybody would agree, but you can't go out and take any child that has had an accident with matches or has made smoke bombs or firecrackers and stuff like that and declare them a threat. So the problem is you've got warning indicators, but these warning indicators can be somewhat universal. So there's a problem there. And you'd really want to know why in 2016 the courts wanted him to go into counseling. Again, that seems to have been hidden from the public.
All right, Steve Moore, thank you so much. And coming up, we're going to be speaking with the police chief of the Palm Springs Police Department. With us now is Palm Springs Police Chief Andrew Mills. Thank you so much for being here with us. First off, where do things stand with this investigation right now?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Pamela. This is an ongoing, very complex investigation in multiple locations, and the FBI has done a fantastic job working this case. Our detectives are helping them search not only here, but in another county where we are collecting evidence and making sure that we have a complete and full understanding of what took place and who may or may not have been involved.
So you say who may or may not have been involved. How confident are you that the suspect acted alone?
I'm very confident that the suspect acted alone at the scene of the blast. However, we want to make sure that through social media that others did not help him in any way. And, you know, my mantra is if you see it, you own it. There were people in chat rooms. There were people who are connected to him who had to have known, in my opinion, that he was up to nefarious deeds. And that should have been brought forward. And anybody out there who has a loved one who's Googling mass casualties or active shooters, bomb making materials, people have to speak up. That's how this country works. We just can't be in everybody's social media 24/7. People who have knowledge need to speak up. So if they see it morally, they own it.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, you've seen with other tragic events that there is a track record on social media, sort of warning signs there, and no one spoke up. And in this case, tell us a little bit more about what you've learned in terms of the warning signs he was putting out on his social media and other people who may have been involved in those conversations.
I think what we're learning is being widely reported in the open media, and one thing I can say is that the media, including CNN, have been have reported this so carefully. It's really appreciated that people have gone on facts, not fear. Mm-hmm. And but what we're seeing is that he was chatting with people in online groups and online forums, as well as posting stuff on YouTube where he was experimenting with different types of explosive materials. That should have been reported. And if people were aware of that, that's when the police can intervene, prevent these attacks, but also get the person help. And that's what our ultimate goal would be.
Do you foresee any more arrests for like aiding and abetting, that kind of thing?
You know, that'll have to be up to the FBI, who's the lead in this investigation. And my partner, Akil Davis, assistant director in Los Angeles, has just been an absolute champion. And I can't speak highly enough of the relationship that we have, local law enforcement, with our FBI partners.
How concerning is it to you that someone in your community was able to gather enough materials to set off an explosion of this size?
Well, to be clear, he was about an hour away from our city, but it is concerning that someone could, excuse me, gather enough explosive material to be able to drive it into a city, go to an IVF clinic where people have hope of building families, and detonate that bomb. We are so fortunate that it happened when it did, in the manner in which it did, that there weren't more casualties other than him.
As I mentioned earlier, none of the eggs or embryos at that clinic were harmed. You commended first responders for helping with that. That's just so extraordinary too, right?
Yeah, you know, on social media, Facebook and Instagram, I put out that after I learned of this, of course, they told us after the fact, not before the fact, that they went into buildings that were completely compromised in order to ensure that the electricity was still running, so that the incubators were still working, that the cryogenic holding cells were still operational also and not damaged. And then they went into the building that was completely collapsed. I think you showed drone footage of it earlier. That is literally completely collapsed. They went in there to retrieve the records of people who are having IVF treatments this week for the doctors. Completely hazardous, completely unsafe. But they did it because they realized the importance of giving these families hope, that they could build a family that could be productive members of society and really help our communities in the future. So my hat is off to Special Agent Chris Meltzer and Deputy Fire Chief Greg Lyle for putting their heads down, going in there and taking a huge risk personally. Even both of them have families to be able to give other families hope. And that's incredible.
Yeah, they deserve major kudos for that. Chief Andrew Mills, thank you so much.